Burnley is the classic example of a British northern working class town, home to cotton mills, a canal and 70,000 people. But there's something much more important than all of these things in Burnley: their football club. And this is the story of how Burnley FC qualified for European football. Burnley are one of the oldest clubs in British football, founded on the 18th of May 1882 when they converted from rugby to football, and 6 years later they were one of the 12 founding members of the Football League. However, they didn't get much success in their early years, being relegated to the second division in the late 1890s, but roughly 15 years later, just before World War I, Burnley returned to the top flight and won the FA Cup the year after, and only 3 years after the war, Burnley lifted their first division title. But unfortunately they couldn't build upon this, and it took 39 years, a relegation and a promotion back to the first division before Burnley were able to win their second league championship in 1960, qualifying Burnley for the European Cup in the next season. And with a bye to the first round, Burnley beat Stade Rennes at the Parc des Princes, taking them to the quarter-final against Hamburg. And despite taking a 3-1 lead to Germany, Burnley lost 4-1 to Hamburg, ultimately knocking them out of the tournament. And with this came the end of the glory days for Burnley, who sat predominantly in mid-table over the next decade, which was preceded by relegation at the start of the 70s. Burnley had a brief resurgence to the top division in 1973, but it was short-lived, being relegated again in 76. And it didn't stop there. By 85, they were in the fourth tier, and on the 9th of May 1987, Burnley found themselves one game away from relegation from the Football League entirely. And on this day, Burnley had to beat playoff candidates Leyton Orient and hope that Swansea beat Lincoln to avoid relegation to the conference. And with an estimated more than 17,000 fans at Turf Moor, Burnley won 2-1, while Swansea beat Lincoln by 2-0. Burnley was safe. And this is still remembered as a historic moment by Burnley fans, even today, and could be seen as a turning point on their long journey back to the top. And slowly but surely, they patched up their wounds and made their long-awaited return to the top division, now the Premier League, in 2009. But in that very same season, they were relegated. Again. And so, after a couple more years in the Championship with a stint with Eddie Howe, who had to leave the club for Bournemouth due to personal issues, Burnley brought in a new manager, a man by the name of Sean Dyche. And in Dyche's first full season in charge, in the 2013-14 season, led by Danny Ings, Burnley came second, gaining automatic promotion to the Premier League. But Burnley suffered the same bad fortune yet again, finishing in 19th position, but this time the board decided to stick with Dyche, and the decision paid off. And finally, in the 2015-16 season, Burnley won the championship, and in the next season they managed to stay up in the Premier League, finishing in 16th position. In the 2017-18 season, Burnley were highly tipped to struggle or even end up relegated back to the championship, but Burnley shocked almost everyone, finishing in 7th place and qualifying for the UEFA Europa League qualification rounds. So the question arises, how did they do it? Well, Sean Dyche set up his side to play a 4-4-1-1 formation, with the midfielders sitting deep, the fullbacks tucking into the defence, and the wingers defending the wings, and two midfielders to hassle the man on the ball, with Jack Hawke doing this particularly effectively, hence why he started all 38 Premier League games for Burnley last season. This meant that the majority of crosses that Burnley faced came from deeper positions, and so they could be dealt with much greater ease by James Tarkowski and Ben Mee, who both had excellent seasons last season. And the narrowness of the defence made long shots the only real alternative, but the Burnley side were well drilled and found it relatively easy to deal with most of these shots, which explains why the only teams that conceded less than Burnley last season were the top 5, despite Burnley conceding 562 shots in the season, the second most in the league, with only Stoke conceding more. However, only 164 of those shots were on target, which puts Burnley pretty much in the middle of the table for shots on target conceded. And with a helping hand from the likes of Everton, Leicester and West Ham having poor seasons, you can clearly see why Burnley finished in 7th last season. And so, Burnley move into their second leg tie at home against Başakşehir, with the game being drawn 0-0 in Istanbul. And with the Fortress Moor faithful behind them, I believe that they will beat the Turkish outfit and will proceed to the Europa League Playoff round, which, barring an exceptional comeback by Luzern, will be against Greek side Olympiakos. But regardless of the result, Burnley fans should be proud of what their club has achieved, whether they make it to the group stage or not, because Burnley, after 51 years of waiting, have European football at Turf Moor again. So this has been the full story of how Burnley qualified for European football. Thank you very much for watching. Leave a like if you enjoyed, comment if you've got any feedback, and subscribe for more content like this on The Shone Show.